I watched my 7-year-old son Dylan's face light up as we pulled into my parents' driveway on his birthday morning. Sarah had spent 3 hours the night before decorating his chocolate chip cake with tiny baseball players, and Dylan clutched his new Little League glove against his chest. But when we walked through that familiar front door, my parents rushed past us like we were invisible, showering my sister Amanda's kids with wrapped presents and bright balloons. Dylan's excited smile crumbled as Emma and Jake received the celebration meant for him. Not even a hug for my son on his special day. The 20-minute drive from our apartment had been filled with Dylan's chatter about turning 7, his small voice bubbling with anticipation as he described which friends might call to wish him happy birthday. Sarah sat beside me in the passenger seat, carefully balancing the homemade cake she decorated until nearly midnight, adding those perfect little baseball figures because Dylan had just joined his first Little League team 3 weeks ago. I remember pulling into the familiar suburban Pittsburgh driveway where I'd grown up, the same cracked concrete where I'd learned to ride my bicycle 25 years earlier. Dylan bounced in his booster seat, pointing at the house's blue shutters that my father Robert had repainted last summer. This was supposed to be magical for him, just like my own childhood birthdays in this same house where my parents would wake me with pancakes shaped like my age number. Our financial situation had been tight since I lost my engineering position at Henderson Manufacturing 6 months ago. Sarah worked part-time at the local pharmacy, but her income barely covered our rent and Dylan's daycare expenses. Still, we'd managed to save enough for a small birthday celebration, and Sarah insisted on baking Dylan's favorite cake from scratch rather than buying one from the grocery store. She'd used every last chocolate chip in our pantry, measuring ingredients with the precision of someone who truly cared about creating something special. Amanda had returned to Pittsburgh 3 months ago, following her divorce from Bradley, bringing her 2 children Emma and Jake to live temporarily in our parents' guest bedroom. Emma was 5 years old, and Jake had just turned 9. I understood that our parents wanted to help their daughter through a difficult transition, but I hadn't expected the complete shift in their attention and affection. When we rang the doorbell, my mother Martha's voice called out excitedly from inside. But when she opened the door, her enthusiasm immediately deflated upon seeing us. She glanced quickly at Dylan, then peered around us as if expecting someone else to appear. "Oh," she said flatly, "you're here." Before I could respond, Emma and Jake came running toward the door, and suddenly my parents transformed into the grandparents I remembered from my own childhood. Martha knelt down with animated expressions, pulling colorfully wrapped boxes from behind her back, while Robert appeared with a cluster of metallic balloons shaped like cartoon characters. "Surprise, my darlings!" Martha exclaimed, her voice filled with genuine joy as she embraced Emma and Jake. "Look what Grandma and Grandpa got for you." Dylan stepped forward hesitantly, his new baseball glove still pressed against his chest. "Where are my birthday presents?" "Grandma?" he asked with innocent curiosity, his 7-year-old mind unable to comprehend why his cousins were receiving gifts on his special day. The silence that followed felt crushing. Martha glanced up at Dylan with what I can only describe as irritation, as though he'd interrupted something important. "Maybe later, sweetheart," she said dismissively, immediately returning her attention to Emma, who was tearing open a box containing an expensive tablet computer. Robert didn't even acknowledge Dylan's birthday. Instead, he ruffled Jake's hair and began praising the boy's recent performance in soccer practice, asking detailed questions about his goals and assists while completely ignoring his own grandson standing 3 feet away. Sarah's jaw tightened beside me, and I could feel her anger radiating as she watched our son's confusion grow. Dylan looked up at me with those wide brown eyes, silently asking why his grandparents were acting so strangely on his birthday. I had no answer that would make sense to a 7-year-old child. Amanda emerged from the kitchen wearing a satisfied smirk as she surveyed the scene. She watched Dylan's bewilderment with what appeared to be amusement, then walked over to embrace our parents warmly. "I'm so glad I decided to bring the kids over today," Amanda said loudly, making sure we could all hear. I wanted them to spend time with their real cousins and get to know the family better. That phrase hit me like a physical blow. Real cousins. As if Dylan wasn't legitimately part of this family, as if his relationship to Emma and Jake was somehow artificial or temporary. The climactic moment came when Amanda turned to face me, directly, her expression cold and calculating. I deliberately scheduled this surprise visit for today because I knew Mom and Dad would be home, she announced with cruel satisfaction. It's time Emma and Jake met their actual relatives, not just the connections through marriage. The implication was unmistakable and devastating. Amanda was referring to Sarah's adoption status, something I'd never imagined my family held against her. Sarah had been adopted as an infant by loving parents who'd given her every advantage in life, and she'd grown into the most caring, dedicated mother I'd ever known. But apparently, in my family's twisted perspective, her adoption status somehow made Dylan less legitimate as their grandchild. Sarah's face went pale as Amanda's words sank in, and I realized that my parents' sudden coldness toward Dylan wasn't accidental oversight or distraction. This was deliberate exclusion, based on prejudice I'd never known existed in my own family. I felt my hands begin to shake as the full weight of Amanda's words settled over the room. 29 years of believing my parents were decent, loving people suddenly crumbled as I witnessed their calculated cruelty toward my son. Dylan stood frozen beside the door, still clutching his baseball glove, while Emma and Jake continued unwrapping expensive electronics that should have been birthday gifts for him. What exactly are you saying, Amanda? I demanded, stepping protectively closer to Dylan. What do you mean by real cousins? Martha straightened up from where she'd been cooing over Jake's new handheld gaming device, her expression shifting into defensive mode. Baxter, don't make this dramatic, she said coldly. Amanda's children are blood relatives. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that family connections matter. The casual cruelty in her tone stunned me. Robert nodded in agreement, avoiding eye contact with Dylan while continuing to praise Jake's athletic achievements. Blood is thicker than water. Son, he said matter-of-factly. Emma and Jake are our direct descendants. Dylan is connected through marriage, which isn't quite the same thing. Sarah's sharp intake of breath told me she'd heard every word. I turned to see tears forming in her eyes as she processed the revelation that my parents had never truly accepted her as family, despite 12 years of marriage and countless holidays spent together in this same living room. Connected through marriage, Sarah's voice came out as barely a whisper. I've been part of this family for over a decade. Dylan is your biological grandson. Amanda laughed, a harsh sound that made Dylan flinch. You're adopted, Sarah, she said with vicious satisfaction. You're not really family either. You're just someone who married into our bloodline. That makes Dylan a step-grandchild at best. The logic was insane and cruel, but I could see from my parents' expressions that they agreed with Amanda's twisted reasoning. Dylan, still too young to fully understand the adult conversation swirling around him, began asking the questions that broke my heart. Daddy, why don't Grandma and Grandpa want to hug me? He asked innocently. Did I do something bad? Is that why Emma and Jake got presents instead of me? I knelt down to his level, struggling to find words that wouldn't destroy his 7-year-old understanding of family love. You didn't do anything wrong, buddy. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and forget what's really important. But Dylan's questions continued with the relentless honesty of childhood. Don't they love me anymore? Why are they being mean on my birthday? While I tried to comfort my son, I noticed Sarah moving toward the kitchen, probably seeking a moment to compose herself. But when she returned, her expression had changed from hurt to fury. In her hand, she held 2 birthday cards with colorful envelopes, both clearly addressed to Emma and Jake, with today's date printed prominently on cheerful cartoon characters. You planned this, Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with rage. These cards are dated for today. You knew it was Dylan's birthday and you deliberately arranged for Amanda's children to receive celebration instead. Martha's face flushed red as she realized she'd been caught in the premeditation. We can celebrate multiple children, she said defensively, but her explanation fell flat. Where's Dylan's card? Sarah demanded. Where are his presents? Where's any acknowledgement that today is supposed to be special for him, Amy? The silence stretched uncomfortably before Robert finally spoke. Amanda needed our support, he said firmly. Her children have been through a difficult divorce. They needed to feel welcomed and loved. And what about our child? I stood up, my protective instincts fully activated. What about Dylan's need to feel welcomed and loved by his grandparents on his birthday? Amanda stepped forward with that same cruel smirk. Dylan gets plenty of attention from Sarah's adoptive parents, she said dismissively. Emma and Jake only have us as grandparents now. We need to prioritize the children who truly belong to this family. That statement revealed the calculated nature of their cruelty. This wasn't emotional oversight or favoritism born from recent circumstances. This was systematic exclusion based on their prejudiced beliefs about adoption and family legitimacy. But the most devastating discovery came when I walked toward the living room hoping to find evidence of their previous love for Dylan. The photo albums that had always lined the coffee table now told a different story. Pages that once displayed Dylan's baby pictures, his first steps, his preschool graduation had been replaced entirely with recent photos of Emma and Jake. Sarah joined me as I flipped through album after album, searching desperately for any trace of our son's presence in the family's visual history. Every single photograph of Dylan from the past 2 years had been removed and replaced with Amanda's children. They've erased him, Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. They've literally erased our son from the family record. I closed the album and looked around the room with new eyes. Dylan's artwork, which used to be proudly displayed on Martha's refrigerator, had disappeared. The small framed photo of him in his first Little League uniform, which Robert had bragged about to neighbors just last month, was nowhere to be seen. Even his handprint in clay from a Mother's Day craft project 2 years ago had vanished from the mantelpiece. The climactic revelation came when I noticed Robert's study door standing slightly ajar. Something compelled me to investigate, perhaps hoping to find evidence that they still cared about Dylan somewhere in the house. What I discovered instead destroyed any remaining faith I had in my parents' character. Hidden beneath a stack of bills on Robert's desk was a legal document that made my blood run cold. It was an application for my parents to legally adopt Emma and Jake, complete with paperwork, to change the children's last names from Amanda's married name to our family name. But the truly devastating part was the attached estate planning document clearly outlining plans to make Emma and Jake the primary beneficiaries of my parents' will, effectively disinheriting Dylan entirely. Amanda had been systematically manipulating our parents for months, positioning her children to inherit everything while ensuring Dylan would receive nothing. The legal papers were dated from 6 weeks ago, proving this wasn't a recent decision made in emotional turmoil. This was calculated long-term planning designed to completely remove my family from any inheritance or legacy. When I confronted them with the documents, Amanda's mask finally slipped completely. Dylan doesn't deserve our family's money, she said with chilling coldness. Sarah's not really our daughter, so her child isn't really our grandchild. Emma and Jake are Robert and Martha's true genetic legacy. I held the adoption papers in my trembling hands, trying to process the scope of Amanda's manipulation. The documents weren't just legal forms. They represented months of calculated planning to systematically exclude Dylan from his own family legacy. Amanda had convinced our parents to not only emotionally abandon their grandson, but legally erase his future inheritance. How long has this been going on? I demanded, spreading the papers across Robert's desk so everyone could see the evidence. How long have you been planning to cut Dylan out of the family? Amanda's composure cracked slightly, but her cruelty remained intact. Since I realized what kind of mother Sarah really is, she said venomously. Do you think I haven't been paying attention to how she raises that boy? She's too soft with him, doesn't discipline him properly. Emma and Jake are being raised with real values. The accusation was so absurd, it took my breath away. Sarah was an exceptional mother who balanced kindness with appropriate boundaries, who helped with Dylan's homework every night, despite working full-time, who volunteered for every school event and knew the names of all his classmates. Amanda's criticism revealed her desperation to justify the unjustifiable. But Amanda wasn't finished destroying our family. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder stuffed with documents. "Since we're sharing paperwork," she said with malicious satisfaction, "let me show you what I've been documenting about your family's problems." The folder contained fabricated evidence designed to make me appear irresponsible, and Sarah seem unfit as a mother. Bank statements had been doctored to show excessive spending on unnecessary items. There were forged documents suggesting I'd been repeatedly asking our parents for loans, making it appear as though I was constantly begging for money instead of managing our finances responsibly during unemployment. Most disturbing were the character references Amanda had apparently solicited from neighbors and acquaintances filled with lies about Sarah's parenting and my work ethic. She'd systematically approached people in our community, spinning stories about our family's supposed problems and gathering statements that painted us as unstable and unreliable. "I've been building a case," Amanda announced proudly. "When Mom and Dad apply for custody of Emma and Jake, they'll need to demonstrate that they're better guardians than the biological parents they're replacing. But I also wanted to show them how much better Emma and Jake are being raised compared to Dylan." Martha and Robert examined the fabricated evidence with serious expressions, as though Amanda's lies carried more weight than 12 years of direct observation of our family. Their willingness to believe manufactured accusations over their own experience with Dylan revealed how completely Amanda had poisoned their perspective. "These bank statements show Baxter asking for money constantly," Robert said, gravely reviewing documents I'd never seen before. "And these character references suggest serious problems with Dylan's behavior at school." "Those documents are complete fabrications," Sarah said firmly, her voice growing stronger as she recognized the extent of Amanda's deception. "Dylan has never had behavioral problems at school. His teachers consistently praise his kindness and cooperation, and Baxter has never asked your parents for loans." But Amanda had prepared for our denials. She produced her smartphone and began playing audio recordings that made my stomach drop. Somehow, she'd been secretly recording conversations in our home, editing them to create false impressions of our character and intentions. The first recording was from a private conversation between Sarah and me about our tight budget, but Amanda had edited it to make it sound like Sarah was complaining about caring for Dylan. Words had been cut and rearranged to completely change the meaning, making Sarah appear resentful of motherhood when the original conversation had actually been about her desire to provide more opportunities for our son. Another recording seemed to capture me bad-mouthing our parents, but I recognized the manipulation immediately. Amanda had taken snippets from a conversation where I'd been defending them against criticism from Sarah's adoptive parents, editing out the context to make my defense sound like attacks. "I've been documenting your family's problems for 8 months, Amanda revealed with disturbing pride. "Every time you visited, every phone conversation, every comment about Mom and Dad. I wanted them to understand what kind of people they were really dealing with." Dylan had been listening to the adult conversation with growing confusion, but Emma chose that moment to demonstrate how thoroughly Amanda had poisoned her children against their cousin. "Dylan's weird," Emma announced loudly, clearly coached in her cruelty. "Mommy says his mommy isn't really his mommy because she's adopted, and that makes Dylan not really related to us." Jake nodded in agreement, adding his own coached insults. "Yeah, and Dylan's daddy doesn't have a job because he's lazy. That's what Mommy told Grandma and Grandpa. We're better than Dylan because we're real family." Hearing those innocent children parroting Amanda's hatred broke something inside me. Dylan's face crumpled as he processed his cousin's cruel words, finally understanding that the adults around him had been deliberately excluding him from family love. "Why are they saying mean things about Mommy?" Dylan asked through tears. Mommy's the best mommy in the whole world. She reads me stories every night and makes my lunch look like funny faces. Sarah knelt beside Dylan, wrapping her arms around him protectively. Because some people have forgotten how to be kind, she said gently, shooting a furious look at Amanda. But that doesn't change how much Mommy and Daddy love you. The climactic revelation came when Amanda's phone rang during the confrontation. She answered it quickly, but not before I caught a glimpse of the caller ID showing my former boss's name. When she realized I'd seen it, her expression shifted to panic. "That was your boss from Henderson Manufacturing, wasn't it?" I demanded. "Why is my former boss calling you?" Amanda tried to deflect, but her obvious guilt gave her away. "Shh, I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but she was clearly caught. I grabbed the phone from her hands and looked at the call history. Multiple calls from Marcus Williams, my former supervisor, over the past 6 weeks. Calls from the Human Resources Department at Henderson. Calls from 2 other engineering firms in the Pittsburgh area. "You've been intercepting my job opportunities," I said, the pieces finally clicking together. "You've been sabotaging my employment search." Amanda's silence confirmed my suspicion, but Martha stepped forward defensively. "Amanda was trying to help," she insisted. "She was screening calls to protect you from disappointment." Protecting me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was deliberately keeping me unemployed to make us more financially desperate. She wanted us to fail so you'd see us as incompetent and irresponsible. The scope of Amanda's manipulation was breathtaking in its cruelty. She'd systematically isolated us from family support, sabotaged our financial recovery, and poisoned our parents against us while positioning herself and her children as the superior family unit worthy of love and inheritance. But the most devastating realization was yet to come. Amanda's phone rang again, and this time she couldn't hide the caller ID quickly enough. It was Marcus Williams calling back, and when I answered the call myself, his words changed everything. "Baxter, thank goodness I finally reached you," Marcus said with obvious relief. "I've been trying to contact you for weeks about a senior engineering position in Denver. The salary is $85,000 annually with full benefits, and we need someone to start immediately. Your sister-in-law kept telling me you'd moved away and weren't interested in work, but I hoped she was mistaken." The phone call that could have changed our entire financial situation, the job opportunity that would have solved our problems and restored our stability, had been sabotaged by Amanda's deliberate interference. She'd been answering our parents' phone, where we'd temporarily forwarded calls during a service interruption, and lying to potential employers about my availability and interest. "She told you I'd moved away?" I asked Marcus while staring directly at Amanda's guilty face. "Yes, and she said you were dealing with personal problems and weren't looking for employment." I almost gave up, but something seemed off about her responses. That's why I kept trying to reach you directly. Amanda had nearly destroyed our future while convincing our parents that our financial struggles proved our unworthiness as family members. The cruelty was so complete, so calculating, that I finally understood we were dealing with someone who felt no genuine love for Dylan or respect for our family unit. The phone conversation with Marcus continued while Amanda stood frozen, realizing her sabotage had been completely exposed. Marcus explained that he'd been trying to reach me for 6 weeks, offering not just employment, but a senior position that would have immediately solved our financial crisis and restored our family's stability. "Your sister-in-law was very convincing," Marcus continued through the phone. "She told me you were having substance abuse problems and had become unreliable. She said you'd left Pittsburgh permanently and weren't interested in engineering work anymore. I almost removed you from our candidate list entirely." I looked directly at Amanda as Marcus spoke, watching her face pale as she realized the extent of her exposure. "She told you I had substance abuse problems," I repeated loudly, making sure my parents could hear every word of her lies. "Yes. She was quite detailed about your alleged issues. She mentioned family problems, financial irresponsibility, and concerns about your mental stability. She painted a picture of someone we definitely wouldn't want to hire for a senior position." Sarah's gasp was audible as she processed the systematic character assassination Amanda had orchestrated. Not content with poisoning our parents against us, Amanda had been destroying my professional reputation with potential employers, ensuring our financial struggles would continue indefinitely. When I hung up the phone, the room fell silent except for Dylan's quiet sniffling as he tried to understand why the adults around him were being so cruel on his birthday. Amanda made one final desperate attempt to justify her actions. "I was protecting this family," she said defensively, but her voice lacked conviction. "Baxter's been unstable since losing his job. I didn't want him making hasty decisions about employment that might affect his ability to care for Dylan." Protecting the family. Sarah's voice was incredulous. "You've been systematically destroying our lives while convincing Robert and Martha that our problems prove we're unfit parents." But Amanda's manipulations went even deeper than sabotaging job opportunities. When I confronted her about the recorded conversation, she revealed the sophisticated nature of her surveillance operation. For 8 months, she'd been using a hidden recording application on her phone to capture private family moments whenever she visited our home or when we gathered at our parents' house. "I wanted documented proof of the problems in your marriage," Amanda admitted with chilling calculation. "I knew that if Mom and Dad heard you and Sarah fighting about money, they'd realize Dylan was being raised in an unstable environment." She pulled up additional recordings on her phone, playing edited conversations that made Sarah sound like she resented motherhood, and me sound like I blamed our parents for our financial difficulties. The editing was remarkably sophisticated, with words and phrases rearranged to completely alter the meaning of our private discussions. One recording particularly devastated Sarah. Amanda had captured a conversation where Sarah was expressing concern about affording Dylan's Little League equipment, but the edited version made it sound like Sarah was complaining about the cost of raising Dylan and wishing she didn't have to spend money on him. "That's not what I said," Sarah protested, tears streaming down her face. "I was worried about disappointing Dylan if we couldn't afford the team fees. I was trying to figure out how to make it work because I wanted him to play baseball so badly." But Martha and Robert seemed more willing to believe Amanda's edited recordings than their own observations of Sarah's devotion to Dylan. Their prejudice against Sarah's adoption status had created a filter through which they interpreted every piece of evidence Amanda presented. "These recordings are concerning," Robert said gravely, as though Amanda's manipulated evidence carried more weight than 12 years of witnessing Sarah's excellent parenting. "They suggest serious problems in your household that we weren't aware of." "The recordings are fabricated lies," I said firmly, but I could see that Amanda's poison had worked too effectively. Our parents wanted to believe her version of reality because it justified their prejudiced treatment of Dylan. The financial aspect of Amanda's manipulation became clearer when I demanded to see their bank statements. Robert initially refused, but when I threatened to leave immediately with Dylan and never return, he reluctantly produced several months of banking records. The documents revealed that Amanda had been receiving substantial financial support from our parents throughout her supposed time of need following the divorce. Monthly transfers of $1,500 had been flowing from their retirement account to Amanda's checking account for the past 4 months, totaling over $6,000 during the same period when they'd refused our requests for temporary assistance with rent. "You've been giving Amanda money while watching us struggle," Sarah asked in disbelief. "While Dylan's been eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch because we couldn't afford lunch meat, you've been sending his aunt enough money to buy those expensive gifts for her children." Martha's defensive response revealed the depth of their financial favoritism. "Amanda needed help getting back on her feet," she said stiffly. "She has 2 children to support without a husband's income." "And we have 1 child to support without my income," I pointed out. Why does Amanda's need matter more than Dylan's needs? But the most shocking financial revelation came when I noticed a mortgage refinancing document among Robert's papers. They'd taken out a second mortgage on the family home, borrowing $50,000 against their equity. When I asked about the purpose of the loan, their evasive answers revealed Amanda's influence. "We needed to make some investments for the future," Robert said vaguely, but when I pressed for details, the truth emerged. They'd borrowed against their home to establish college funds for Emma and Jake, while no such provision existed for Dylan's education. "You mortgaged your house to pay for Amanda's children's college education?" I asked in amazement. "You've put your retirement security at risk for kids who aren't even your legal grandchildren, yet while your actual grandson gets nothing, you..." The evidence was overwhelming, but our parents seemed incapable of recognizing Amanda's manipulation or their own cruelty. Their prejudice against Sarah's adoption had created a blind spot that allowed Amanda to exploit their worst instincts while destroying our family's relationships. The climactic moment came when my phone rang again, displaying Uncle Tom's number. Tom was Robert's younger brother, someone I'd always respected for his fairness and honesty. When I answered his call on speakerphone, his words revealed the scope of Amanda's family-wide manipulation campaign. "Baxter, I'm calling to apologize," Tom said without preamble. "I just discovered that Amanda has been lying to the entire family about you and Sarah for months. She contacted me 3 months ago with stories about your drug problems and Sarah's mental instability, and I'm ashamed to admit I believed her lies." The revelation that Amanda had been systematically poisoning our entire extended family against us hit like a physical blow. Tom continued his explanation, describing how Amanda had approached multiple relatives with fabricated stories about our family's supposed problems. "She showed me doctored photographs that supposedly proved you were using drugs," Tom continued. "She had fake medical records suggesting Sarah was being treated for psychiatric problems. She even had forged documents showing that you'd been arrested for domestic violence. I believed her because she seemed so concerned about Dylan's well-being." Sarah collapsed into a chair as she processed the extent of Amanda's character assassination campaign. Not only had we been excluded from family gatherings and celebrations, but our relatives had been actively avoiding us based on Amanda's lies about drug abuse, mental illness, and domestic violence. "How did you find out the truth?" I asked Tom while glaring at Amanda's increasingly panicked expression. "I started investigating when Amanda asked me to testify against you in a custody hearing," Tom explained. "She wanted me to provide a statement about your alleged drug problems for some legal proceeding involving Dylan. When I tried to verify her claims, none of the supposed evidence held up to scrutiny. Amanda had been planning to use our extended family's poisoned opinions as ammunition in a potential custody battle, building a case to remove Dylan from our care entirely. The scope of her manipulation was so vast and cruel that I struggled to comprehend how someone could orchestrate such systematic destruction of family relationships. But Tom had more devastating information to share. Amanda also showed me bank records suggesting you'd been stealing money from your parents and medical records claiming Sarah was an unfit mother due to mental health issues. When I tried to verify these documents with the supposed sources, I discovered they were completely fabricated." The phone call was being conducted on speaker so everyone in the room could hear Tom's revelations about Amanda's lies. But instead of apologizing for believing such obvious fabrications, Robert and Martha seemed irritated that Tom was contradicting Amanda's version of events. "Tom's always been gullible," Martha said dismissively, as though her brother-in-law's discovery of the truth was somehow a character flaw rather than vindication of our innocence. But Tom wasn't finished exposing Amanda's manipulation. His final revelation would provide the legal ammunition needed to ensure justice for the damage she'd inflicted on our family and Dylan's emotional well-being. "There's something else you need to know," Tom said gravely. "Amanda has been embezzling money from Grandma Peterson's estate account. She's been managing the fund as executor, but she's stolen over $30,000 that was supposed to be distributed equally among all grandchildren, including Dylan." Tom's words about the embezzlement hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Grandma Peterson's estate fund had been established specifically to provide educational support for all her grandchildren, including Dylan, but Amanda had been systematically stealing from the account while serving as the trusted executor. $30,000, Sarah whispered in shock. Amanda stole $30,000 from Dylan's inheritance. Tom's voice through the speakerphone was filled with anger and disappointment. I've been working with Cousin Janet and Cousin Mark to investigate the discrepancies in the estate account. We noticed that the quarterly reports Amanda submitted didn't match the bank statements we requested independently. When we confronted the bank directly, we discovered massive, unauthorized withdrawals over the past 18 months. Amanda's face had gone completely white as she realized her criminal activities had been discovered by multiple family members working together. She'd been so focused on manipulating Robert and Martha against us that she hadn't anticipated other relatives would investigate her financial management. Those withdrawals were legitimate expenses, Amanda said desperately, but her voice lacked any conviction. Estate management requires various costs and fees. $18,000 for children's toys and electronics. Tom's response was sharp. $12,000 for vacation expenses. Amanda, we have receipts showing you used Grandma Peterson's money to buy Emma and Jake expensive gifts while Dylan received nothing from his own inheritance fund. The irony was devastating and perfect. The expensive presents that Emma and Jake had been receiving, the gifts that made Dylan feel excluded and unloved, had been purchased with money stolen from his own inheritance. Amanda had been using Dylan's legacy to fund the very favoritism that broke his heart. Robert and Martha looked stunned as they processed the revelation that their trusted daughter was not only a manipulator, but a criminal who had stolen from their deceased mother's carefully planned legacy for all her grandchildren. "I don't believe this," Martha said weakly, but her protest sounded hollow even to herself. Tom continued his devastating exposure of Amanda's crimes. "We also discovered that Amanda has been forging signatures on estate documents. She created fake invoices from legal firms and funeral homes to justify withdrawals that actually went directly into her personal accounts. This isn't just family drama, it's criminal fraud that requires police involvement." Amanda made one final desperate attempt to control the narrative, but her lies had become so complex that she couldn't keep track of her own deceptions. "The money was used for legitimate purposes," she insisted. "Emma and Jake needed support after their father abandoned them. I was protecting their interests. By stealing from their cousin." Tom's incredulous response captured exactly what I was thinking. "By taking money that was legally designated for Dylan's education and using it to buy toys for your own children." Sarah stood up slowly, her anger transforming into something cold and determined. "So, let me understand this completely," she said to Amanda with icy precision. "You've been poisoning our family relationships, sabotaging Baxter's job search, recording our private conversations, and stealing Dylan's inheritance money to buy gifts for your own children. All while convincing Robert and Martha that we're the problem family that doesn't deserve love or support." The comprehensive nature of Amanda's betrayal was breathtaking in its scope and cruelty. She'd attacked every aspect of our lives while positioning herself as the victim who deserved sympathy and financial assistance. But Tom had been coordinating with other family members to gather evidence, and his next revelation provided the legal framework for justice. "Cousin Janet works for the district attorney's office," he explained through the phone. "She's already prepared criminal charges for embezzlement fraud and identity theft. The evidence is overwhelming and Amanda will face serious legal consequences." Amanda's panic reached a crescendo as she realized her criminal activities would have real-world consequences beyond family drama. "You can't prosecute family," she said desperately, looking around the room for support that was no longer available. "We absolutely can prosecute family members who commit crimes," Tom responded firmly. "Grandma Peterson worked her entire life to leave that inheritance for her grandchildren. You stole Dylan's educational future to buy toys and vacations. That's not family business, that's criminal theft." Robert and Martha sat in stunned silence as the full scope of Amanda's deception became undeniable. Their golden daughter, the one they'd chosen to trust over their son, was revealed as a manipulative criminal who had stolen from her own deceased grandmother while orchestrating the emotional abuse of her nephew. Dylan had been quietly listening to the adult conversation, and his 7-year-old mind had processed enough to understand the basic injustice. "Aunt Amanda stole my money," he asked with innocent clarity. The money Grandma Peterson left for my school? Yes, sweetheart, Sarah answered gently. Aunt Amanda took money that was supposed to help you go to college someday, and she used it to buy presents for Emma and Jake instead. Dylan's response demonstrated wisdom beyond his years. That's why Emma and Jake got presents on my birthday, he said thoughtfully. Because Aunt Amanda bought them with my money. That's not fair. The simple moral clarity of a child's perspective highlighted the profound injustice that the adults had allowed to continue. Dylan understood immediately what his grandparents had failed to recognize. Amanda had been systematically abusing and stealing from him while they provided support and approval for her actions. Emma and Jake, sensing that their mother was in serious trouble, began crying and clinging to Amanda's legs. For the first time since we'd arrived, I felt genuine sympathy for these children, who had been used as weapons in their mother's campaign of family destruction. It's not Emma and Jake's fault, I said to Sarah quietly. They're just kids who've been taught terrible things by their mother. But my sympathy for the children didn't extend to forgiveness for Amanda's systematic cruelty. The damage she'd inflicted on Dylan's emotional well-being, combined with the theft of his inheritance and the sabotage of our family's financial recovery, required serious consequences. Tom's next words provided the structure for justice. The police will arrest Amanda within 24 hours, he announced through the speaker. We have bank records, forged documents, and witness statements proving criminal fraud. She'll be charged with embezzlement, identity theft, and possibly additional crimes depending on what else the investigation uncovers. Amanda's breakdown was complete as she realized her manipulation campaign had not only failed, but exposed her to criminal prosecution. I was trying to protect my children, she sobbed, but her excuse rang hollow after the overwhelming evidence of her calculated cruelty. You were trying to steal Dylan's inheritance while convincing his grandparents to abandon him emotionally, Sarah said with fierce maternal protection. You used your own children as weapons to hurt an innocent 7-year-old boy. That's not protection. That's abuse. The climactic moment came when Dylan approached his grandparents directly, his small voice cutting through the adult drama with devastating simplicity. Grandma and Grandpa, he said clearly, you were mean to me on my birthday because Aunt Amanda told you lies about Mommy and Daddy. But now you know the truth. Do you want to say sorry for being mean, Iki? The question hung in the air, offering Robert and Martha one final opportunity to choose love over prejudice, to acknowledge their mistakes, and rebuild their relationship with their grandson. Their response would determine whether our family could ever be repaired, or if we would need to build our future without them entirely. Martha looked at Dylan's hopeful face, then at the overwhelming evidence of Amanda's manipulation scattered across the coffee table. For a moment, I thought she might choose redemption and apologize for the pain they'd caused their innocent grandson. Instead, she turned away from Dylan and said coldly, Amanda made mistakes, but that doesn't change the fundamental problems in your family. Blood relationships still matter more than legal connections through adoption. Martha's cold rejection of Dylan's innocent request for an apology shattered whatever small hope remained for reconciling our family. Even confronted with overwhelming evidence of Amanda's manipulation and criminal behavior, she chose to maintain her prejudice against Sarah's adoption status rather than acknowledge the pain they'd inflicted on their 7-year-old grandson. Robert nodded in agreement with his wife's heartless response. Amanda may have used poor judgment in her methods, he said stiffly, but her concerns about family priorities weren't entirely wrong. We need to focus our resources on our direct bloodline descendants. The casual cruelty in their continued rejection of Dylan was breathtaking. Despite learning about Amanda's embezzlement, her lies about our family, her sabotage of my employment opportunities, and her systematic campaign to poison our relationships, they still chose to support her perspective over their innocent grandson's emotional well-being. Dylan's face crumpled as he processed their final rejection. This 7-year-old child had offered forgiveness to adults who had deliberately hurt him on his birthday, and they had responded with additional cruelty. The devastating moment when Dylan realized his grandparents genuinely didn't love him would be seared into my memory forever. I don't understand, Dylan whispered through tears. Why don't you want to love me? Sarah knelt beside our son, wrapping him in protective arms while shooting a furious look at my parents. Because some people have forgotten how to be good, she said softly to Dylan. But that doesn't change how wonderful and lovable you are. Amanda, despite facing criminal charges and family disgrace, made one final attempt to justify her actions. Everything I did was to protect Emma and Jake's inheritance, she said desperately. Dylan has Sarah's adoptive parents to help with college expenses. My children only have Robert and Martha. The selfishness and cruelty in her reasoning was staggering. She'd stolen Dylan's inheritance while arguing that he didn't deserve it because Sarah's adoptive parents might provide educational support. The logic was not only morally bankrupt, but factually wrong, since Sarah's adoptive parents had modest retirement savings and couldn't fund college expenses for their grandson. But Amanda's justification revealed something important about her motivations. This wasn't just about money or inheritance. It was about her deep-seated resentment toward our family's happiness and stability before my job loss. She'd been jealous of our marriage, our financial success, and Dylan's well-adjusted childhood, so she'd systematically worked to destroy everything we'd built. You were jealous, Sarah said with sudden clarity. You couldn't stand that we were happy while your marriage was falling apart, so you decided to destroy our family relationships and financial security. Amanda's silence confirmed Sarah's assessment. The entire campaign of manipulation had been motivated by jealousy and spite, rather than genuine concern for her children's welfare. As we prepared to leave this toxic environment forever, Dylan demonstrated remarkable emotional maturity. He approached Emma and Jake, who were still crying about their mother's trouble with the police, and offered them comfort despite their earlier cruelty toward him. I'm sorry your mommy is in trouble, Dylan said with genuine kindness. Even though you were mean to me, I still hope you'll be okay. The contrast between Dylan's natural empathy and the calculated cruelty of the adults around him highlighted everything that was wrong with this family dynamic. Our 7-year-old son had more emotional intelligence and moral character than his grandparents or aunt. Emma looked at Dylan with confusion as though his kindness was foreign to her experience. Why are you being nice? She asked. Mommy said you don't really belong in our family. Because being kind feels better than being mean, Dylan answered with 7-year-old wisdom. And maybe your mommy was wrong about some things. That simple exchange demonstrated the fundamental difference between the values we'd taught Dylan and the hatred Amanda had instilled in her children. Despite everything he'd experienced today, Dylan chose compassion over revenge, forgiveness over bitterness. As I gathered our things to leave, my phone rang one final time with a call that would provide the perfect ending to this devastating day. Marcus Williams was calling back with additional details about the Denver position, and his timing couldn't have been more appropriate. Baxter, I wanted to follow up on our earlier conversation, Marcus said when I answered. After hearing about the communication problems you've been experiencing, I want to make this opportunity as clear as possible. We're offering you a senior engineering position at $85,000 annually, full health benefits, and a $5,000 signing bonus to help with relocation expenses. We need an answer by tomorrow morning. The phone call was on speaker, so everyone in the room heard the concrete details of the career opportunity Amanda had nearly destroyed through her sabotage. The position would not only solve our immediate financial problems, but provide a fresh start in a new city away from the toxic family dynamics that had poisoned Dylan's childhood. I accept the position, I said immediately, looking directly at my parents as I spoke. My family and I will be relocating to Denver within the month. Martha's face went pale as she realized we weren't just leaving for the day. We were leaving Pittsburgh permanently. You can't just move away, she protested weakly. Dylan is our grandson. Dylan is your grandson that you rejected on his birthday in favor of children who aren't even related to you. Yet, Sarah responded with icy precision. You've made your choice about what family means to you. We're making our choice about protecting our son from people who don't value his beautiful heart. Robert made one half-hearted attempt to minimize their responsibility. We made some mistakes today, he admitted reluctantly. But moving across the country seems like an overreaction. Mistakes. I couldn't believe his casual dismissal of their systematic cruelty. You deliberately excluded Dylan from family celebrations, financially supported Amanda while watching us struggle, believed obvious lies about our character, and continued rejecting Dylan even after learning the truth about Amanda's manipulation. Those aren't mistakes. Those are choices that reveal your true values. Dylan tugged on my sleeve and asked the question that would guide our family's future decisions. Daddy, does this mean we're moving to Colorado where people will be nice to us? Yes, buddy, I said, kneeling down to his level. We're going to build a new life with people who appreciate how special you are. The satisfaction in Dylan's smile as he processed the idea of escaping this toxic environment was heartbreaking and hopeful simultaneously. This 7-year-old child understood that leaving cruel people was necessary for protecting his emotional well-being. As we walked toward the door for the final time, Uncle Tom's voice came through my phone with one last piece of crucial information. Baxter, there's something else you should know. Janet from the DA's office says Amanda will likely face 3 to 5 years in prison for the embezzlement charges. The stolen inheritance money will be recovered and returned to Dylan's education fund with interest penalties paid by Amanda. The news that justice would be served provided emotional satisfaction, but more importantly, it meant Dylan's financial future would be restored. Amanda's crimes would result in consequences that protected other potential victims, while ensuring our son received his rightful inheritance from Grandma Peterson's legacy. Amanda's final words as we left revealed her complete inability to accept responsibility for her actions. "This is all your fault," she screamed at us. "If you hadn't been so sensitive about family preferences, none of this would have happened." Even facing criminal prosecution for embezzlement and fraud, she blamed us for refusing to accept the emotional abuse of our child. Her complete lack of accountability confirmed that leaving was the only option for protecting Dylan from further psychological damage. As we walked to our car with Dylan's birthday cake and our shattered illusions about family loyalty, Dylan asked one final question that would stay with me forever. "Daddy, are we sad or happy about leaving?" I looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly, then answered with complete honesty. "We're sad that some people choose to be unkind, but we're happy that we get to build a new life with people who will love us the way families should love each other." Dylan considered this carefully before responding with remarkable wisdom. "Then I think we should be more happy than sad because kind people are better than mean people, even if the mean people are supposed to be our family." Our 7-year-old son had learned the most important lesson about family relationships. Blood connections mean nothing without love. Respect and kindness, while chosen families built on genuine care, can provide everything that biological families fail to offer. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of our new 3-bedroom house in suburban Denver, watching Dylan help Sarah frost cupcakes for his 2nd-grade class Valentine party. The transformation in our family's life had been nothing short of miraculous, built on the foundation of choosing love over obligation and prioritizing emotional health over family expectations. The engineering position at Marcus Williams's company had exceeded every expectation. Within 3 months of starting work, my performance earned recognition that led to a promotion and salary increase to $95,000 annually. The financial stability allowed Sarah to enroll in nursing school at the University of Colorado, pursuing her dream of becoming a pediatric nurse, while knowing our family's security was assured. Dylan thrived in his new environment with the resilience that children possess when removed from toxic situations. His new school celebrated diversity and inclusion values that felt foreign after experiencing my parents' prejudice against adoption. His teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, regularly sent notes home praising Dylan's kindness toward classmates and his natural leadership abilities during group projects. The most beautiful change was in Dylan's relationship with family. Sarah's adoptive parents, Linda and James, had driven from Kansas to spend Dylan's 8th birthday with us, bringing thoughtful gifts and genuine enthusiasm for his interests. They listened attentively as Dylan described his new friends, his progress in Little League, and his excitement about Sarah returning to school. "This is what grandparents are supposed to be like," Dylan whispered to me during the birthday celebration, his observation highlighting the stark contrast between genuine family love and the conditional acceptance we'd experienced in Pittsburgh. Uncle Tom and several cousins maintained regular contact through video calls and planned to visit us during summer vacation. The extended family members who had discovered Amanda's lies became fierce advocates for Dylan's inclusion in family relationships, sending birthday cards, Christmas gifts, and frequent messages of support that helped heal the wounds of rejection. The legal resolution of Amanda's crimes provided both justice and financial restoration. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison for embezzlement fraud and identity theft. The court ordered her to repay the $30,000 stolen from Dylan's inheritance fund plus $15,000 in penalty fees and interest. Dylan's education account was now larger than originally planned, securing his college future despite Amanda's attempts to steal it. Emma and Jake were placed in foster care initially, but Uncle Tom and his wife eventually gained custody of the children. Tom made it clear that rebuilding family relationships required acknowledging past mistakes and treating all children with equal love and respect. Emma and Jake slowly learned to move beyond the hatred their mother had taught them, though the process would take time and professional counseling. My parents made several attempts to contact us during our first months in Denver, but their messages revealed no genuine understanding of their mistakes or commitment to change. Martha's voicemails focused on their loneliness and financial struggles following Amanda's criminal conviction, while Robert's emails emphasized their desire to work things out without acknowledging the emotional damage they'd inflicted on Dylan. "They want us to pretend nothing happened," Sarah observed after listening to another manipulative message from Martha. "They expect forgiveness without accountability, love without respect." We made the difficult decision to maintain minimal contact until they demonstrated genuine recognition of their harmful actions and commitment to treating Dylan with the unconditional love every grandchild deserves. The decision wasn't made in anger, but in wisdom, protecting our son from further emotional manipulation while leaving the door open for authentic reconciliation, if they chose personal growth over pride. The most profound healing came through building new traditions and relationships that reflected our values. Dylan's birthday celebrations became joyful occasions, filled with friends' chosen family and genuine appreciation for his unique personality. We hosted neighborhood gatherings, joined community organizations, and created support networks based on mutual respect rather than biological obligation. Sarah's transformation was equally remarkable. Freed from the constant stress of trying to prove her worth to people who would never accept her adoption status, she blossomed into confident leadership roles at Dylan's school and in our community. Her nursing studies provided intellectual stimulation and career purpose that had been delayed by years of financial struggle and family drama. I never realized how much energy I was spending trying to earn love from people who weren't capable of giving it. Sarah reflected one evening as we watched Dylan practice batting in our backyard. "Moving here taught me that real family relationships shouldn't require constant proof of worthiness." Dylan's insight about family relationships continued to guide our decisions. When he asked about visiting Pittsburgh to see his grandparents, we had honest conversations about the difference between forgiveness and trust, between loving people who have hurt you and exposing yourself to continued harm. "Forgiving Grandma and Grandpa means we don't stay angry at them," Dylan concluded after one of these discussions. "But it doesn't mean we have to let them hurt our feelings again." His 7-year-old wisdom had evolved into 8-year-old emotional intelligence that impressed every adult who spent time with him. Dylan's teachers, coaches, and friends' parents regularly commented on his empathy, kindness, and maturity that clearly resulted from experiencing both cruelty and unconditional love. The financial stability of our new life allowed us to give back to other families experiencing similar challenges. Sarah volunteered with an organization supporting adoptive families while I mentored unemployed engineers through career transitions. Our experiences with family betrayal and recovery provided unique perspectives that helped others navigate their own difficult relationships. 1 year after leaving Pittsburgh, Dylan received a letter from Emma that demonstrated the possibility of healing even the most damaged family relationships. Written with Uncle Tom's help, Emma's letter apologized for the cruel things she'd said during Dylan's birthday party and expressed hope that they could be friends someday. "I was taught wrong things about family," Emma wrote in her careful 8-year-old handwriting. "Uncle Tom is helping me learn that being cousins means being kind to each other. I hope you can forgive me for being mean." Dylan's response showed remarkable emotional growth. He dictated a letter explaining that he forgave Emma and Jake because children shouldn't be blamed for lessons taught by confused adults. He included photos of his new life in Denver and invited them to visit when they were ready to build a friendship based on kindness rather than competition. The correspondence with Emma and Jake, supervised by Uncle Tom, became a positive connection that honored family relationships while maintaining healthy boundaries. Dylan learned that some family members could grow and change, while others remained trapped in harmful patterns. Our second Christmas in Denver was everything a family celebration should be. Linda and James joined us for the holiday, bringing warmth, laughter, and genuine interest in our lives. Uncle Tom's family visited for New Year's, creating new traditions that included all children equally. Dylan's friend from school, whose parents were spending the holiday working at the hospital, joined our celebration as chosen family. "This feels like what Christmas is supposed to feel like," Dylan observed as he helped clear dishes after our holiday feast. "Everyone's happy, and nobody's being mean to anybody else." His simple observation captured the profound difference between relationships built on love versus obligation, between family gatherings that celebrate each person's unique value versus those that enforce hierarchies based on prejudice. The professional success continued as my reputation in the Denver engineering community grew. Marcus Williams recommended me for a consulting position that increased my annual income to over $100,000, while providing flexibility to spend more time with family. The financial security that had been sabotaged by Amanda's interference was now stronger than ever before. Sarah graduated from her first year of nursing school with honors, earning academic recognition that led to scholarship opportunities for her remaining coursework. Her professors consistently praised her natural empathy and communication skills, qualities that would make her an exceptional pediatric nurse. "I think everything we went through in Pittsburgh prepared me to help families in medical crisis," Sarah said after completing her pediatric rotation at Children's Hospital, Colorado. "I understand what it feels like when family relationships become sources of pain rather than support." Dylan's 9th birthday party was a celebration of everything we'd built in our new life. 15 school friends joined us for a backyard barbecue with games, cake, and genuine joy. Linda and James drove from Kansas with thoughtful gifts that reflected their deep knowledge of Dylan's current interests. Uncle Tom's family participated via video call, singing happy birthday and sharing in Dylan's excitement about his presence. "This is the best birthday ever," Dylan announced as he opened presents surrounded by people who truly cherished him. "Everyone here loves me for real, not just because they have to." The contrast with his 7th birthday party in Pittsburgh was stark and beautiful. Instead of rejection and favoritism, Dylan experienced unconditional acceptance and celebration. Instead of cruel adults prioritizing prejudice over love, he was surrounded by people who valued his character and kindness. As I watched Dylan blow out candles on the cake Sarah had lovingly decorated with his current passion for dinosaurs, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment of perfect family happiness. The decision to leave Pittsburgh had been painful but necessary, protecting our son from continued emotional abuse while creating space for authentic relationships to flourish. The life lesson that emerged from our experience was both simple and profound. Real family is defined by love, respect, and unconditional acceptance rather than biological connections or legal obligations. The people who truly belong in your life will demonstrate their love through actions that honor your worth and protect your emotional well-being. Dylan's wisdom about choosing kindness over cruelty, forgiveness over bitterness, and growth over stagnation, had guided our family toward a future filled with genuine love and mutual support. His resilience in the face of rejection taught us that children possess natural wisdom about relationships that adults often complicate with prejudice and manipulation. Standing in our Denver backyard watching our son celebrate his birthday, surrounded by people who adored him, I felt profound gratitude for the painful experiences that had led us to this beautiful life. Sometimes the greatest acts of love require walking away from people who refuse to love you properly, trusting that better relationships await those brave enough to seek them. The family we'd built through choice rather than obligation was stronger, kinder, and more authentic than anything we'd lost in Pittsburgh. Dylan's laughter as he played with friends who valued his friendship reminded me that love multiplies when it's genuine, while forced relationships drain energy without providing emotional nourishment. Our story became a testament to the power of protecting children from toxic family dynamics while remaining open to relationships that honor every person's inherent worth. The courage to choose love over obligation had given Dylan the childhood he deserved, filled with security, acceptance, and unconditional support. As we gathered around the birthday cake for photos that would become treasured memories, I realized that our journey had taught us the most important lesson about family relationships. You can forgive people who have hurt you without allowing them continued access to cause more pain, and the family you choose through love can be more powerful than the family you inherit through birth. I hope this story resonates with anyone who has struggled with family relationships that cause more pain than joy. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between maintaining family connections and protecting your emotional well-being? How do you balance forgiveness with healthy boundaries in relationships that have caused you harm? I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about family resilience and the courage to choose love over obligation. Your support helps us continue sharing these important conversations about building healthier relationships and protecting the people we love from unnecessary emotional pain. Thank you for listening to our family's journey, and I wish you the wisdom to recognize the difference between people who deserve your unconditional love and those who need to earn back your trust through genuine change and accountability. Remember that sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away from those who refuse to love you properly, creating space for relationships that honor your true worth.